I'm going to focus on biology for now, and we are going to look at the characteristics of living things. Characteristics of living things. Now, characteristics of living things, we oftentimes use the acronym Mr. Niger ACD. Mr. Niger ACD is the acronym we use. Okay, let's quickly look at the excretion. Now, excretion is a process of removing metabolic waste from the system. There are some things that are not needed in the system. They cannot even be stored in the system because with time, they are going to generate issues to the system. Okay? Animals generally do not store waste materials. But we know that plants store waste materials. Where do they store waste materials? Plants store their waste in the bags. Excuse me. Plants store waste materials in the bags, the outermost coverage of the stem, the bags. They are not going to send out the waste materials. What are the waste materials that are seen in plants? Waste materials found in plants: alkaloids, mucilage, gums, tannins, and so many others. Alkaloids, mucilage, gums, and these are waste materials that are seen in plants, but they are not removed from the plant. They are stored in the plants. Okay? But animals send out their waste materials. They do not store their waste materials. For instance, the CO2 that is sent out is a waste material. When you urinate, the urea that is sent out is a waste material. The excess salt is a waste material. Excess sugar is a waste material. All those things will be sent out from the system. Now, when we talk about excretion, we are referring to those things that can be taken out, can be filtered away from the useful ones and then sent out of the system. These things are not stored in the system. We cannot fail to mention the kidney as a very important excretory organ in humans. The kidney as a very important excretory organ in humans. And the basic units of the kidney, we have two kidneys, humans have two kidneys, but we can survive with one kidney because there are a lot of issues where one kidney is faulty and you will have to live with one kidney. Some people even donate kidneys. Maybe you have a very loved one, a person has issues with the two kidneys, and your two kidneys are very functional, you can decide to donate one. But if you donate that one, just ensure that know that you have just one kidney left. If problem arises from the one kidney left, and then you have to look for somebody who's going to donate the kidney for you. That is why, because kidney is very important, that's why we're having two kidneys, so that if one is faulty, and the other one can at least still keep you. One, you can just survive naturally with one kidney till your old age, no problem, no complications. But you have to be careful with what you take into the system because one very important thing or substance that damages the kidney very fast is alcohol. Alcohol damages the kidney very, very fast. So if you can do away with alcohol, I know some people cannot say without taking alcohol, but it can be moderately done so it does not damage the kidney. Because of course, if it damages the kidney, we'll have a whole lot of problems. How to send out the waste materials beginning from the urine and everything will become a problem. Because when we talk about osmoregulation in the system, it's actually directly the duty of the kidney to carry out that. We have thermoregulation, we have osmoregulation. Where the water balance in the system is not regulated, it will affect so many things. Sometimes people swell up, people just swell up like that because so much water is not being regulated. You have issues left, right, and center. And of course, when you have excess water in the system, it's going to dissolve a whole lot of substances in the system more than it should have been. And when those things that were supposed to be in maybe saturated forms are dissolved more than they should, it becomes a problem in the body. So the nephron, which is the basic unit of every kidney, is very, very important. One kidney contains millions of nephrons. The actual selective reabsorption, ultrafiltration, and ion exchange that takes place in the nephron is within the kidney. So if you are looking at the kidney, which we are going to look at the excretory system as a topic on its own, but just know that the kidney is a very important organ when we talk about excretion in humans. And I've mentioned that animals send out their waste materials while plants store their waste materials. I've mentioned some examples of waste materials in plants and those ones that are from animals. And don't forget that nephrons, millions of nephrons found in the kidney carry out this role of selecting, reabsorbing some substances that are present in the system and they are not useful. So if we have, okay, this is nephron, okay, we have kidneys. Kidney looks more like a bean seed, something like this, something like this, something like this. The kidney, and of course, you have the bladder somewhere here. You have the renal artery and the renal vein somewhere out here. And then you have the ureters. You have the urethra. You have the bladder. Of course, you have the left and the right kidney. Top of the kidney where you have the adrenal gland, which of course produces the insulin. We are going to that. We have the outermost part of the kidney that is called the cortex. And of course, we have the medulla. We have the cortex. Then we have the medulla. So the way the nephron is situated in the kidney is such that the loop is somewhere here, while the collecting duct is somewhere here, and then you have the capsule somewhere here, something like this, and then you have another one, still a U shape, you have another one, still a U shape, you have another one, still a U shape, and so on. Millions of them making up a kidney, and they carry out similar functions, so that if one nephron is not working very well, we still have millions of other nephrons that can carry out a similar function to excrete or to send out substances that are not useful in the system. Okay, then we move directly to the reproduction. Reproduction as a characteristic of living things is very, very important. Very important in the sense that it gets to a point in life where naturally one will feel that the person should reproduce. The person should reproduce. Plants do reproduce. Animals do reproduce. Humans reproduce. Birds reproduce. As little as ants do reproduce. So what is reproduction? We would say that reproduction is a process of bringing forth new ones, young ones into life. Okay, well, we have two types of reproduction. We have the sexual reproduction, which will have something to do with fission of gametes. Okay, two different gametes are involved, two different genders are involved. The male gamete and the female gamete will have to fuse and then to bring out the zygote. Okay, when they bring out the zygote grows into offspring and so on. Now, when there is fission of gametes, then we have the male gamete. If you take a walk to the hospital or the clinic, you always see a sign that looks like this, and you also see a sign that looks like this. Now, wherever you see this sign, it represents the male gender, and this represents the female gender. Now, do not forget that humans naturally have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs. That means they appear in twos. 23 pairs of chromosomes or 46 chromosomes. Now, in reproduction, we do not need 46 chromosomes, okay? Because this is a diploid number. You have 2n. Diploid number, that's 46 chromosomes. We need half of this, which is actually going to be n. Because the zygote will have to have a diploid number. So if you have the male gamete and the female gamete during a reproduction process, coming together to form a zygote, we'll have something like this is male, this is female, okay? Then you have this, let's say this is a gamete, maybe you have Y, maybe you have X at this point, and then there is a cross at this point. Now this is actually haploid number of chromosome, which is just 23, and this is also haploid number of chromosome, which is also 23. Okay, but the zygote that is formed is actually going to carry a diploid number of chromosome, which is 2n or 46 chromosomes. Okay, when the zygote grows into adulthood and is also ready to reproduce, we only have to bring out 23 chromosomes as well, and it goes on and on. So half the number of chromosomes is needed in reproduction from different humans, different organisms that are involved in the reproductive process. Now, we also note that females, as the case may be, carries X and X chromosome. That means similar chromosomes carried by females, while the male gamete carries X and Y chromosomes. So the choice of a female or a male child is actually being determined by the combination of any of these chromosomes. At all times, the females will always donate that, like neutral, at the neutral point, they'll always donate any of the X chromosomes. So we would say that the gender of a child is 100% being determined, physically being determined by the father of the child. Because we have some cases where the man will send the wife out of the house. You've been giving birth to female children all the while. Why can't you give birth to a male child? Why can't you give me a male child? And sometimes in the scientific world, you just look at them and, if possible, you have to call them and then begin to explain things to them. Because thank God for sciences, we've been able to analyze and then we know that the gender of a child is actually, for instance, now let's look at something. For instance, we're still talking about reproduction now. Excuse me. For instance, remember I have said that the male will carry both X and Y gamete, while the female will carry X and X gamete. Now, let's say that during reproduction process, now it is the male gamete of the X gamete of the male that actually fertilize any of these gametes of the female. We know that X and X actually represents a female child, and this is going to give the man a female child, which means that the mother has nothing to do with the choice of the gender of the child. Now, if in the next copulation, the fertilization that has taken place is still the X that is here, then the man is still going to have a female child. If the third copulation, it is still X, then the man is still going to have a female child. So the wife is just there, waiting for the X or the Y chromosome to fertilize the egg. But if by chance the Y comes here to fertilize the eggs, that is when the man can have a male child. So we can see that it's actually determined by the man and not the woman. If we're talking about sexual reproduction, then there must be fission of gametes, like I have explained. So now, in the reproductive strategy and in the reproductive world, we will begin to ask questions: why is it that we have so many female children in the world, so many female children in the hospital, so many female generally on earth? What is happening? Why is it that in families you have more of the female children than the male children? And so have you. A lot of factors are involved. A lot of factors are involved, which time may not permit until we get to the topic reproduction. Then we get to see what really happens. Why do we have? Now, let me just give you this. This one is just a bonus, that the X and Y gametes will not travel at the same speed. The release, the ejaculation of the semen that contains millions of the male gamete that goes into the reproductive tract of the female, the X gamete and the Y gamete do not travel at the same speed. That is one factor. The second factor is that the X gamete and the Y gamete do not have the same strength. The third factor is that the X gamete and the Y gamete, one survives longer than the other. The fourth factor is that one of these gametes will survive for 48 hours in the system of the female. The other will survive 72 hours. So which one now survives longer, 72 hours? Is the X. Which one survives just 48 hours? Is the Y. So if you are looking at the statistics of 10 children that are being given birth to, you should have at least 6 to 7 female. At least 6 to 7 female. Because of these factors and other factors which, when we get to reproduction as a topic, we are going to express ourselves better. Okay, so we have the sexual reproduction in this format. We also have another type of reproduction we call the asexual reproduction. Now, in the asexual reproduction, unlike the sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction does not have anything to do with fission of gametes. They don't need gametes. There is no copulation. Okay? No gamete is produced. No gamete is fused. No female and male species. So this one bring male gamete, this one bring female gamete. let us fuse them and then to bring a zygote. No. Asexual reproduction only involves one particular organism giving rise to another organism of its own kind. For asexual reproduction, there is no fusion of gametes, and it only takes one species, one organism, to give rise to other organisms. Example, we have the binary fission, we have the multiple fission, we have fragmentation, we have budding. These are all asexual reproduction processes. Now, binary fission, multiple fission are seen in unicellular organisms such as the protozoans that I mentioned. So we have, now for binary fission, we have a particular organism, say amoeba, pretis, and this is the cell, okay, because it is unicellular organism, is a cell, and then this cell is going to divide, but before this cell divides, you will have the nucleus is here, okay, and then in this nucleus we have what we call the genetic materials, the chromosomes. All right, now this is the nucleus, and we have the chromosomes or the genetic materials. Okay, now before the cell divides, in terms of the binary fission, the chromosomes must first condense and duplicate. So the duplication of the chromosome is actually the first stage of binary fission, and that is called karyokinesis. Karyokinesis. That is the duplication of the chromosome. Okay? Now, after the chromosome has duplicated itself, then we go to the next stage, which is a diakinesis. Now, diakinesis is actually the division of the nucleus, because after this is done, the nucleus will have to divide first. So you have something like this. The nucleus divides to give us two nuclei. Singular is nucleus, plural is nuclei. This process is what? Diakinesis. Now, immediately after diakinesis, we have cytokinesis. And cytokinesis is actually a division of the cytoplasm. Remember, the nucleus are divided into two. So we now have this side now, this side. This carries one nucleus, this carries the other nucleus. And at this point, the division of the cytoplasm gives us what we call binary fission, or completes the process of binary fission. So we can see that the active processes or the active sub-processes or the steps or the stages are karyokinesis, which is the duplication of the chromosomes, and we have diakinesis, which is the division of the nucleus into nuclei. Then we have cytokinesis, which is actually the separation of the cytoplasm to give us the two different organisms. So this is observed in most unicellular organisms, such as the amoeba pretis, such as paramecium, and so on. Multiple fission is actually a similar process to binary fission. The only difference is that binary fission gives us two offspring, while multiple fission will give us more than two offspring. That means at this point, for multiple fission, this nucleus will have to divide into more parts, because at the end of the day, when the cytoplasm divides, it will divide based on the number of nuclei we have. So for multiple fission, we have more than two nuclei that will be formed before the splitting of the cytoplasm, and because of that, we have more cytoplasms formed at the end of the day. So that is an example of what happens in multiple fission. Then for fragmentation, which is mostly observed in worms. When we get to classification, we are going to look at the three groups of worms that belong to. We have this other one, phylum Platyhelminths. Platyhelminths. We have another one, phylum Nematoda. Then we have another one, phylum Annelida. So all the worms on earth, all the worms that have ever existed and will still exist belong to any of these three groups. Either phylum Platyhelminths, the flat worms, phylum Nematoda, the round worms, or phylum Annelida, the segmented worms. Now, when we were younger, we used to carry out a lot of experiments unknowingly. Sometimes when it rains, you see worms coming out. Sometimes you sprinkle salt and you observe what happens to the worms. Or sometimes you cut a part of the worm and you notice that the head region will not die, will still crawl away. So more research has it that these other parts can reform itself, can regenerate itself. So fragmentation is actually the splitting of these body segments. Now, each of the segments will now grow to form a complete organism. It's very different from binary fission, very different from multiple fission. So it has to be with, excuse me, a whole organism splitting itself, and each of the segments that has been splitted grows to form a complete organism. You take note of that. Now, remember, it has nothing to do with fusion of gametes at this point. Then we have the budding. Budding is observed in yeasts. Budding is observed in hydra. Now, budding is a process where an organism will have to, on its own, grow a part or grow a different part, seal on its system or in its body, growing a different part of it, and then detaching it by itself. If we have something like this, for instance, we have hydra. At a particular stage in this life cycle, a hydra will grow a young one somewhere here, and it grows to a mature stage. When it grows to a point that it can stay on its own, so naturally the hydra is going to cut off this part that has grown. The process of growing this part, this young hydra, from the body of the mature hydra is what we call budding. So this young hydra is called the bud. Okay, so when it is time, this young hydra or this bud will be detached of the parent and it begins to live its own separate life. So we can see that in all these four processes, we do not need any fusion of gametes. It has to do with one species of organism giving rise to another organism of its kind. Because if we are defining reproduction, we said that the organism will have to give rise to another organism of its kind, of its species. For instance, a goat will not give rise to a cattle. A cow will not give rise to a hen. So the offspring, the progeny, the hybrid, the young one must be of the same kind, such as the parents. Remember what Gregor Mendel said, that these traits are transferred from parents to offspring. So all the traits that were from the parents will be seen in the offspring. Okay, even if the traits are hidden in a particular filial generation, it might not escape up to like 3-4 generations. It will still manifest with time. Okay, so that is reproduction. And do not forget that we have mentioned other characteristics of living things. And after reproduction, we are going to look at adaptation. We are going to look at adaptation